is in implementing the reversed Carnot cycle. So in this diagram, you can see various components where these processes can be carried out. And you know what are the processes involved in the reverse Carnot cycle. It has been drawn on PV and TS diagram also in this in these charts that you see. So one of the components is this. If you talk about the process 1-2, that is adiabatic compression. So that is shown on TS diagram here 1-2, and it is shown on the PV diagram here 1-2. So that can be performed in a adiabatic or reversible adiabatic process, so isentropic process. So adiabatic compressor may be used for that purpose. Then the next process is 2-3, that is isothermal compression. Isothermal compression. So you can see it on the PV diagram also, pressure increasing, volume decreasing. So it's compression process, but it is supposed to be isothermal. Now you can make compression and isothermal process only if you are able to reject heat at the required rate. Only if you can reject it very rapidly, a process can become isothermal compression process. So here it is shown that the compression is occurring, so a compressor is shown, but it has also to reject heat along with this compression process. So that is about process 2-3. Now process 3-4. So process 3-4 is again adiabatic. Now you can see that they have drawn this hatching here, kind of insulation, perfect insulation. So it is adiabatic, right? So in process 3-4, it is adiabatic reversible and it is expansion process. So as you can see on the PV diagram, pressure decreasing, specific volume increasing, and 3-4 it is isentropic. So a vertical line on TS diagram, and temperature decreasing. Okay, and then the next process is again isothermal expansion process. So isothermal expansion process 4-1 here on the PV diagram. So pressure as well as volume, specific volume decreasing, and 4-1 is like here, as you can see, it's a horizontal line because it is supposed to be an isothermal process, and specific volume and pressure decreasing. So it's increasing, specific volume increasing, pressure decreasing. So it is isothermal expansion process. So if you can build these type of components and connect them, you will be able to produce, or you will be able to carry out the reverse Carnot cycle or Carnot refrigeration cycle. But there are certain difficulties in carrying out certain processes out of these. So one of the difficulties is carrying out this isothermal compression and expansion process. Now, how are you going to carry out this isothermal compression and expansion process? You have a compressor and you have an expander. Expander is equivalent to a turbine. And while you are doing this compression and expansion, you should be rejecting heat at the required rate. Only then the process can become isothermal. In modern times, we carry out these processes, you know, about different types of compressors and turbines, right? So do you know any of those compressor or turbines which run very, very, very slowly? In practice, almost all of them are very fast moving devices, right? Whether there is a rotor or there is a piston, it is always fast moving device, and the reason why like we make it to move fast, because in a very small volume we want to carry out that process. So the circulation rates are very high, and for that you make that rotor or piston to move very fast. Now while you do that process very fast, there isn't enough time and enough surface area available for heat to escape. If you again remember what you learned in thermodynamics, you talked about various control volumes and steady flow energy equation, and steady flow energy equation applied to various components like compressor and turbine. And it was told that the heat exchange of the system with the surroundings can be neglected, and the process may be assumed to be an adiabatic when you are dealing with compressor and turbine. Okay, the reason for that is that the flow rates are very high. The flow of enthalpy is very high. Enthalpy change is also very high, but the reason the heat is can't escape at very rapid rate, because those we would like to make those components compact, and they are running at a very high speed. So the fluid is moving at a very high rate, and you don't have enough surface area for the heat to escape. So because of these reasons, carrying out isothermal compression and expansion process is very difficult, and you can say impossible in fast moving machines. You may be remembering about quasi-static process as talked about in thermodynamics, right? So in that case, the piston, you make the piston to move very slowly, right? As if like you have a sand, like sand put on, let's say piston, and you take out one grain of sand at a time and allow it to expand, or put one grain of sand on the piston and make it compress the gas. So even if the only if the process is so slow, it can become fully isothermal. In fast moving machines, it doesn't happen. So because you are not able to provide very high surface area on those machines. So isothermal compression and expansion is very far from reality. So that is a very difficult thing to do, almost next to impossible. So you have to think some solution, think of some remedy to this. So one of the remedies could be, here we are talking about compressor and turbine. Is there any way not to have those moving component, piston and rotor, and having some other thing which can still reduce the specific volume, that is carry out compression? So one can try and do that by shifting the cycle inside the saturation dome of the working fluid. Okay. So what you can do is, as it is shown in the figure here, right hand side, you can shift the cycle on TS diagram inside the saturation dome of a substance. So in that case, this 2,3 becomes that is isothermal compression we used to call, right? So you can still call it isothermal compression. Isothermal is possible because condensation is occurring, and this has actually become a heat exchanger. Now it is not a compressor, it is a heat exchanger. So you can still call it isothermal compression, but a better word probably could be contraction rather than compression, right? So it is isothermal and specific volume is decreasing, and you may be able to use a heat exchanger here and carry out the reverse Carnot cycle inside the saturation dome of a substance. And similar thing for the expansion, it is evaporation occurring here at constant temperature, specific volume increasing. So you can call it expansion, isothermal expansion process. So this may be done, but then can you do it for any substance that you want No. So one of the smart move is to reduce the specific volume at constant temperature, is to change the phase of a substance from vapor to liquid using a heat exchanger. This is about the condensation process or the isothermal compression, right? Isothermal compression. So here high rate of rejection is possible because it's not a actually compressor now, it's a heat exchanger. high rate of heat rejection is possible here, as large area for heat transfer can be provided in a heat exchanger, through which the working fluid just passes and no moving parts are needed. Here, the reverse Carnot cycle would be fitted inside the saturation dome in the TS diagram as shown in figure. Ideally, the heat rejection temperature is equal to sink temperature, which is ambient temperature in most of the cases, and heat supply temperature is equal to refrigeration temperature, ideally. Right? The temperature at which you want to cool the product or cool the space, that temperature. A suitable working fluid should be selected whose critical temperature is somewhat higher than the temperature range across which the reverse Carnot cycle operates. So because you want to fit it in the saturation dome, your critical temperature obviously has to be higher than that. So your operating temperature should be safely away most of the times from or below the critical temperature and pressure, and only then you will be able to use that substance as a refrigerant. Now, you may be already knowing about some refrigerants and CFCs and HFCs, and but you may not have given enough thought. Why can't air or water be used for as a refrigerant? Obviously, first chance or trial should be given to air and water, right? Because very like generally abundantly available in nature. In many of the cycles, power producing cycle or even power consuming cycle, we try to use air. Let's say a Breton cycle, we try and use air there. IC engines as working fluid. So why not air as working fluid in refrigeration systems? So air would be a preferred, you can say, most eco-friendly thing. Of course, the product that we produce, for example, in Breton cycle or gas turbine power plants or IC engines, the product that we produce is creating damage to the environment. But if it is in a closed cycle, then the working fluid is not creating any pollution if you use air as a working fluid. So air would be a preferred working fluid because it is freely available as a natural substance. But the problem is that its critical temperature is very low, and the refrigeration cycle should operate below it. If you want to use air as a refrigerant, then because you want to fit your cycle in the saturation dome, your working temperature should be below minus 140.7 degree Celsius. In converting air to liquid phase from vapor phase and vapor phase to liquid phase for expansion process, these all need to be below 140.7 degrees Celsius. Now, your refrigeration temperature is less than minus 140.7 degrees Celsius. Do you need such low temperatures in refrigeration? There could be only very few applications where this may be needed. And again, you need to reject heat at a temperature below that. So where will you reject heat? To which sink will you reject the heat? So it seems that air is not suitable if you want to operate your cycle inside the saturation dome. Now, let us try water for that. Another natural refrigerant available with ease is water. Here, the scenario is almost opposite to that of air. Critical temperature of water is very high, 374 degrees Celsius roughly, and 22.1 megapascal pressure, critical temperature and pressure. And again, water cannot be used because you want the working fluid to flow in the circuit. So it cannot be used below 0 degrees Celsius because it freezes and cannot flow in circuit. But even at now, what will be the difficulty with water? Even at 5 degrees Celsius, say you want to keep your evaporator at 5 degrees Celsius. So 5 degrees Celsius evaporation temperature, what will be the pressure in the evaporator? It will be 0.87 kilopascal. This is absolute pressure, 0.87 kilopascal. And you want to condense that at, let's say, 40 degrees Celsius, the absolute pressure inside the condenser would be 7.38 kilopascal. So these are very low pressures or very high vacuum, and it is difficult to work with such low pressures. Thus, water is also not suited as refrigerant in mechanical compression refrigeration system. So it's never used in mechanical compression refrigeration system. It is used as a working fluid or refrigerant in absorption systems, as we will see in a separate topic. But in mechanical compression refrigeration systems, it is not used as a refrigerant. So we have to find some suitable substance either available in nature, or we have to make it artificially. So such efforts have been done earlier. People tried with something which was available very easily from nature, but then people also used their intellect and came out with synthetic substances, and they proved to be very successful thermodynamically at least. But then there were again other aspects which were thought of, the effect of those substances on environment, and again people had to rethink, and again the trend is towards using natural substances or near natural substances which will create least damage to the environment. So ammonia has been one of the oldest refrigerant and is still very relevant in the current scenario. The critical temperature and pressure of ammonia are 132.25 degrees Celsius and 11.333 megapascal. So let's say you want to produce -6 degrees Celsius temperature in the evaporator. Let's say you want to produce 0 degrees Celsius, like keep something at 0 degrees Celsius. So you may keep the ammonia may expand at -6 degree Celsius. At that time, the pressure would be 341.1 kilopascal. This is absolute. If you add roughly 1 to that, it will be the gauge pressure. So this is the pressure in the evaporator where it is evaporating, and it can condense at 15.554 bar absolute pressure at 40 degree Celsius, right? So this seems to be a manageable range of pressures in a refrigeration circuit. Let's say you want to keep something at 0 degrees Celsius, so you may expand ammonia at -6, right? And let's say your ambient is at 35. So you may condense it at 40 degrees Celsius and reject heat to the ambient, which is at 35 degrees Celsius, right? So it seems ammonia seems to be suitable where you can carry out the whole all processes inside the saturation dome as it was shown. Now, many other synthetic refrigerant would also be suitable for refrigeration application, and the scenario of refrigerant in current refrigeration systems will be discussed separately in another chapter or topic. Okay, now have we solved the issue of this isothermal compression and isothermal expansion? Yeah, probably yes, we have solved the issue. But have we created another problem or issues? Right, that's what happens many times. We try to solve one of the issues. We feel that once it is solved, it will be the end of the problems. But then later on, we find that we have created some other problems while solving that. So two-phase compression and expansion processes. So actually in the quest of making process 2, 3 and 4, 1, isothermal compression and expansion practicable, we have invited some other difficulties. One of them is related with process 1, 2, that is adiabatic compression, which is now two-phase isentropic compression process. Now, so what are the problems? There is very short period of time available for vaporization of liquid particles because what you are compressing is two-phase mixture of liquid and vapor. And again, in fast moving machines, very short time available for vaporization of liquid particle and consequent sudden increase in specific volume in that fast moving compact compressors. So there are all chances that the compressor construction material will or components will get damaged during this phenomena. And second thing is most of the times in compressor and any moving device, we need certain kind of lubrication, which is there in almost all refrigeration systems. If you are using a compressor or let's say an expander, so these liquid particles which are present in vapor entering the compressor can wash away. So it can it can create some problem with the lubrication functioning in the compressor. Okay. So these are two issues, and they are major issues which are happening because of shifting of the whole cycle inside the saturation dome. So again, let us think how we can resolve this issue. One of the option, of course, is that this compression process 1-2, which is inside the saturation dome, can be shifted to outside the saturation dome. That is, point 1 may be shifted rather than being inside the saturation dome, the entry to the compressor, you may shift it. You can extend your expansion process. Okay. So this is like the components can be, these components can be there, and this will be isothermal, sorry, this will be two-phase compressor, this will be two-phase expander, right? And this is just on paper. Whether you can build such a compressor or expander is a question. So as I told, one of the solution to this is that you extend this process for 1 and take this point 1 up to this point where it becomes dry saturated vapor, and then compress it, right? Actually, there is an advantage because of this. You are extending the expansion process, so in single cycle you are producing more cooling effect, so that so you can reduce the rate of flow of the working fluid if you do this. So this is an advantageous thing. So let us try and do that. So that will resolve one of the issues, right? We don't want the mixture to be compressed. We want only vapor to be compressed, right? Only the gaseous form, not liquid form. So if you shift this point here, that problem would get resolved. So that is what is done in the next figure. Okay, so this one is starting from, this is saturated vapor line, and on the left hand side it is saturated liquid line, and this point that is shown is the critical point. So what you will have here on the left hand side is subcooled liquid. What you have on the right hand side is superheated vapor, and inside the saturation dome of that substance, the mixture of liquid and vapor exists. Now you are compressing the saturated vapor. In an, here you can relate it with these components here. So it's an adiabatic process first, 1-2 adiabatic compression, right? Isentropic compression, reversible adiabatic compression process. And on this TS diagram, the constant pressure lines are also shown. So you can draw from point 1, this is the constant pressure line shown, and it's given, the pressure is given name PE because it is evaporation which is occurring here in process 5-1, it is evaporation. So evaporation, so it's given name PE. Now you are compressing it up to point 2, and another constant pressure line is drawn through point 2, and it's given name PI. Now your process, earlier process, if you see, it was this, though the name was like numbers were 3, 4, here it is 4, 5. So this, you have to reach to this point 4, right? You are at 2 and you have to reach to point 4. So, and you want to do it at constant temperature. So you join those 2 points. Now what you find is that this process 2-3 is isothermal process, and pressure is increasing, specific volume must be decreasing, but you have shifted to a higher pressure line. It means that 2-3 is also compression process and it is actually isothermal compression process. So again, you have brought back the same problem. Isothermal compression is to be carried out in this component. Again, a fast moving machine, it has to reject heat at a very high rate. A compact machine, again, that is not feasible, not practicable thing. So process 2-3 is still an issue. And then 3-4 is not much of a problem. You can use a condenser, which is a heat exchanger. You condense the working fluid, you reject heat to the ambient, and it can get condensed. Right? This is saturated vapor, and it gets condensed, starts converting into liquid. It fully becomes liquid at 0.4. So it is saturated liquid at 0.4, and then you expand it. We have still not talked about like whatever issue you have with isothermal expander, or not exactly isothermal compressor, but adiabatic compressor. We did not want a wet compression to occur, right? So similar issue is here also, but as of now, that will be the next thing will be which will be discussed. So this process 4-5 is isentropic expansion, but again two-phase expansion process, because at the end you can see it is the mixture of liquid and vapor, which is liquid and vapor, which is leaving this turbine or expander, but this process is occurring inside that. So it's a fast moving machine, and again liquid particles are getting generated, which can create issues with can damage the fast moving component, whether it is a like a piston cylinder system or it is a rotating system. Okay, so 4-5, the issue is still not fully resolved, and then 5-1 is evaporation process, which can occur in the evaporator. Right. So process 2-3 is still an issue. So what you do is this adiabatic compression is not much of a problem. It may not be perfectly adiabatic, but the process occurs so fast that the little heat escapes, right? So you are not much away from adiabatic process. So that's not much of a problem. Yes, the entropy is not remaining constant. In our actual systems, it will slightly increase, but it's not that the process is completely impracticable. Okay. So let us go further. We have to resolve two issues. This 2-3 process, we have to find some solution. We want to go up to this pressure, right? We want to go up to this pressure PC, because it is the condensation pressure, and we need to go to that pressure so that we can continue rejecting heat at that temperature. Okay. So you have to increase. What you may do is rather than having these two compressors, you extend this adiabatic compression process or isentropic expansion process up to the highest pressure, PC, the condensation pressure or condenser pressure, and then move downward on this constant pressure line, and then it will become constant pressure, constant temperature line. So that's how you may be able to carry out that process. But in that process, this sensible cooling has to occur first, that is called desuperheating, and then only condensation will occur. So what you are doing now is modifications in the reversed Carnot cycle or Carnot refrigeration cycle, and that will lead to a very popular cycle in refrigeration systems, and that is vapor compression refrigeration cycle. So what are the modifications made in the reverse Carnot cycle, so that finally it becomes a vapor compression refrigeration cycle, the first thing is obviously the entry to the compressor now we are talking about standard or ideal vapor compression refrigeration cycle as of now, right? How the actual cycle differs from that or deviates from that will be discussed later. So the vapor only, saturated vapor enters into the compressor, and then the compression is completely adiabatic or isentropic, right? There is no isothermal compressor. So that is one of the changes made. So let us discuss that change. The standard or ideal vapor compression refrigeration, in short we call it VCR cycle, will be described now. The components in this cycle is carried out are also shown in the figure which is following. Wet compression or two-stage compression required in reverse Carnot cycle is now eliminated in this cycle. Here the evaporation process is carried out till refrigerant reaches the dry saturated vapor state, which is shown as state 1 in the diagram. A fast moving compressor increases the pressure or compresses this process. We are talking about 1,2 right? A fast moving compressor increases the pressure of the vapor from evaporator pressure PE. This pressure was given name PE. From this pressure, it increases the pressure of the refrigerant and increases up to the highest pressure was this condenser pressure, this line, right? So in an adiabatic process, straight away you compress it up to that point 2. Thus, isentropic compression is not stopped at temperature Tc, not at the intermediate temp or at this. Not it's not stopped at this temperature. You have to like while you are doing or performing the compression, the temperature exceeds this temperature, the condensation temperature, and exceeds beyond that. So you are not stopping at that point Tc and Pc. You are going further. You are going up to Pc, right? So you are not stopping at Tc at this point, the condensing temperature or condenser temperature. You're going up to somewhat higher pressure up to this higher temperature up to this point, right? Thus, isentropic compression is not stopped at temperature Tc, but rather extended till pressure becomes Pc. There is higher amount of superheating of refrigerant vapor in this process, right? So this 2 double dash is also superheated, but you are not stopping at that point, going further, so that increases the superheating further, right? The temperature is increasing, as you can see from the vertical axis. The vapor coming out of compressor is first sensibly cooled. So the next process is 2-3. So 2-2- is sensible cooling of the vapor. Okay, and then condensed. After that, condensation starts. So 2-3 is condensation. The extension of isentropic compression process adds to an additional area inside the cycle, which is called superheat horn because of its shape, the hatched area A1. Further process of condensation inside the two-phase region is same as reversed Carnot cycle. Refrigerant comes out of condenser as saturated liquid at state 3. So as you can see, if you compare it with the reverse Carnot cycle, which would be 1-2-2-3 and further to that. Here, because we are compressing it up to 2 and then cooling it up to 2-, we have added this area A1 in the cycle. Okay. So that is an additional area and that is called superheat horn because of its shape, horn-like shape, shingda જેવો shape છે. So we call it superheat horn. And actually, large superheat horn is not preferable, right? How much is the superheating depends on different things. It depends upon pressures, but it also depends upon the thermodynamic properties of the refrigerant. So a refrigerant which gives very large superheat horn is generally it gives you low COP, right? So it's not much preferred. So this is a superheat horn which is produce an additional area which is added to the cycle, which was not there in reverse Carnot cycle, but it is always there in vapor compression refrigeration cycle. Now you condense it up to 0.3, and then as per the reverse Carnot cycle, you will expand it isentropically up to 0.4 dash, and then 4-1 would be the 4-1 would be the evaporation process. But again, there is an issue, as already pointed out, with the two-phase expansion process, because a two-phase expansion process carried out in an expander or turbine. Again, it's a fast-moving machine. Liquid particles are going to create problems, erosion problems in that, and also going to interfere with the lubrication. So it is like in vapor compression cycle, the isentropic expansion process is replaced with isenthalpic expansion process. That is constant enthalpy expansion process. There is one more change done in reverse Carnot cycle to make the cycle more practicable and to lower the initial cost of the system. Because here you are talking about an expander, and there is a cost attached to that. But if you can carry it, if you wish to carry out isenthalpic expansion, the device is very simple. It is a very low cost device, okay, as compared to an expander. The isentropic expansion process replaced with isenthalpic expansion process in vapor compression refrigeration cycle. Thus, the expander in the system is replaced with a throttle valve. So you can, I think, recall from thermodynamics the throttling process. So throttling process is an isenthalpic process, right? The steady flow energy equation becomes very, very simple. H1 is equal to H2. In this case, H3 is equal to H4, right? Because of all other components of energy related components in that equation almost not changing. Thus, the expander in the system is replaced with a throttle valve. Throttle valve is a very simple and non-moving component as compared to the expander, right? The throttling device can be as simple as a curtain and just a small hole made in that. On one side, high pressure fluid. On the other side, it will reduce it to low pressure fluid, and that's a throttling process. Okay. The isothermal expansion process is, isenthalpic expansion process is also called Joule-Thomson effect, as already covered in thermodynamics. So the Joule-Thomson JT if coefficient for this effect is defined as the change in temperature with respect to change in pressure when the enthalpy is held constant, right? So this Joule-Thomson coefficient mu JT is defined as change in temperature with respect to change in pressure when enthalpy is held constant. The JT coefficient is unity. You can prove this that is it is equal to 1 for ideal gases, meaning that there won't be any temp. So what you want to do here in this process, you want to reduce the temperature, and for that you are reducing the pressure. When you reduce the pressure, the temperature is reducing. But this need not happen for all substances in all pressure and temperature ranges, right? So you have to make sure that the area where you want to work, the thermodynamic area, where you want to work should have positive value of Joule-Thomson coefficient. You can that can be explained uh, like this. The JT coefficient, this might have been discussed in thermodynamics. So an experiment may be conducted as illustrated in the figure here. When a fluid pressure is reduced, you can see on this side you have high pressure fluid, and you have put some throttling device, right? It can be it can be a curtain with a small hole, or it can be a valve kind of thing, okay, or it can be a porous media plug can be there. So here you have high pressure, and when the fluid passes through that, the low pressure is created. Okay. When a fluid pressure is reduced from higher pressure to lower pressure by passing it through a narrow passage, it undergoes isenthalpic expansion, meaning that its pressure will reduce while specific volume will increase. But what happens to temperature in this process, right? So on this TP diagram, constant enthalpy lines are drawn, multiple constant enthalpy lines are drawn or curves are drawn, and let's say your initial state here on the left hand side is W, and it passes through this porous plug. So pressure reduces. What is going to happen to temperature? Let's say the outlet condition is X, right? You have reduced pressure, but as you can see, temperature has increased. So not in all cases, if you reduce the pressure, the temperature will reduce. Okay, the Joule-Thomson coefficient in this for this curve would give you a negative slope, right? So the temperature is actually increasing. But let's say you start at point Y for this is for a particular enthalpy. You start from point Y, that is a particular combination of pressure and temperature, and you reduce the pressure further. So you can see that the temperature will reduce. So this exercise may be done for all different enthalpies, and you can plot the you can plot this PT curve, right? And what you find is that there is a peak on all of these, and you can join them, and that's called inversion line, right? That's called inversion line. So you if you reduce pressure, temperature will reduce only if you are on the left hand side of this inversion line. So you have to make sure that whatever substance, so not all substances in all temperature pressure ranges can give you this kind of behavior, that is reduction of temperature with reduction in pressure. So you have to make sure that you are inside this region. So if you are talking about, let's say some enthalpies in this area, it will never happen, right? Reduction of pressure will never give you lower temperature, right? And also in this area. Okay. So you have to work in this area. So the Joule-Thomson coefficient should be positive. Okay. Temperature. So we are talking about that kind of expansion in the throttling device, isenthalpic expansion. The temperature. So I have explained all these things. So the top temperature that you see is called inversion temperature. This temperature is inversion temperature. So if you are above inversion temperature, it's never possible that you will be able to reduce temperature if you reduce the pressure. Okay. Now you have replaced that isentropic expansion process with isenthalpic expansion process. Isentropic expansion process produces some work, and if you recall that diagram, you can see this, that this isentropic turbine or expander is shown to be connected with this. So this some net work is some work is produced by this which is fed to this. So you need to provide remaining work in this compressor. So that the work that you need to provide here gets reduced. Okay. So isentropic expansion produces work, but isenthalpic expansion does not produce any work. So actually you have lost that work when you replace isentropic expansion with isenthalpic expansion. So no work is produced in isenthalpic process, that's net work consumption. Now in the given cycle for producing required refrigeration, the net work consumption will be higher. Again, some cooling effect, hatched area A2, it will be shown in the figure, is also lost if isentropic expansion is replaced with isenthalpic expansion. You're also losing some cooling effect. Okay. So you can see that thing here on this right hand side TS diagram. So 3 4 dash is now replaced with 3 4. So you can see that now the expansion will occur or boiling will occur from 4 to 1. Earlier it was from 4 dash to 1. Okay. So you have lost this much cooling effect shown by this hatched area CD44 dash, and that is area A2. So that much cooling effect is also reduced in the cycle. Now, how important is that work, what you lost? So let us try to get some qualitative idea about the loss of work here. These are steady flow devices. So the work produced by such a device, let us assume it to be a reversible process. In a reversible process, it is given by integration VdP. Now you can see that dP is of course important, but this term specific volume is also there here, right? Now when you are talking about the expander, the large part of the fluid that it is handling is liquid, because it starts from saturated liquid and then some part of it gets converted into vapor, but still large part is still liquid. Liquid has a very low specific volume. So the specific volume of liquid is much smaller as compared to vapor, and most of the fraction of the fluid handled by the expander is liquid, having very low specific volume. So even if you used an expander, it would not produce very significant amount of work. Work produced by expander is much smaller as compared to compressor, right? As compared to compressor, because compressor is handling only vapor. So that's why it will be much smaller, right? You can compare it with, let's say, the Brayton cycle and the Rankine cycle. So in Brayton cycle, you have to consider the work of the compressor because it is handling gas. While in case of in case of the Rankine cycle, you most of the time neglect the pump work because it is handling liquid, right? So those are the two extremes. So the work produced by the expander in this case is going to be much smaller as compared to the work consumed by the compressor, which handles only vapor with much higher specific volume. Again, due to irreversibility, actual work produced could be even smaller in an expander. Now, this integration VdP is reversible process work. If it is an actual device, again, irreversibilities will be there, and the actual work that you get by an expander is going to be even smaller than that, and that may make the investment in expander unjustifiable for small systems, right? Because finally, the engineering problems also get converted into economics problem. Finally, the system will be accepted only if it is commercially viable. Okay. A part of refrigerant is converted to vapor in the expansion process, right? So now we are talking about the isenthalpic expansion only. So part of refrigerant gets converted into vapor, and refrigerant enters into evaporator as a mixture of vapor and liquid. The remaining liquid refrigerant is available for evaporation in the in this component, that is evaporator. Refrigerant absorbs heat of evaporation in this component, that is evaporator. The space or product to be cooled is kept in thermal contact with the refrigerant in this evaporator. So it supplies heat and remains cool. Cool, that is the space or the product remains cool in spite of ambient being at a higher temperature. The refrigerant is in dry saturated state when it comes out of evaporator in this standard vapor compression refrigeration cycle. Right. So now we have created or finalized this cycle for the refrigeration system. So the different components are evaporator, which is absorbing heat from the space or the product that you want to cool. And then you have an isentropic compression. Right now we are talking about the ideal or standard vapor compression refrigeration cycle. So it's an isentropic compressor, and then you have a condenser which is rejecting heat to the ambient most of the times, and condensation is occurring, but of course initial part of that is desuperheating. When it enters into the compressor, it is saturated vapor, dry saturated vapor, and you are compressing it up to 0.2 here, and then desuperheating and then condensation. When it comes out of the condenser, it is saturated liquid, and then you are using an isenthalpic expansion device. So the line is like this, 3, 4, right? It's not a vertical line. It's not isentropic process. Entropy increases. Actually, many times I show this line as a dashed line because actually whenever you draw anything, in this case, they have drawn this line as dashed line and this line as full line. I may draw this as a full line and this as a dashed line. The reason is that this is actually, you don't know the intermediate processes because it is not a reversible process, right? Actually, when you draw something on thermodynamic chart, it is supposed to be a reversible process. So 3-4 is an irreversible process. Entropy is increasing, and this is isenthalpic expansion. At 0.4, it enters into evaporator. It is a mixture of liquid and vapor. Liquid will absorb heat from the space or product, and it will start boiling. And so the more and more vapor is produced as it absorbs heat. Finally, when it comes out of evaporator, it is dry saturated vapor, and then it goes into the compressor. So this is the standard vapor compression refrigeration cycle. And 4 minimum components, right? Okay. These are the very basic components, a must for any vapor compression refrigeration cycle. Okay. So we end today's lecture here, and we will talk further about this in the next class.